Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Genesis Home Podcast, where we talk to experts in real estate, finance, business, community, and beyond, covering topics that are important to us. Let's listen in. Yes.
Stephanie Guerilus. Hello, everybody.
So we've been talking for a while. This is like an amazing opportunity to, discuss everything we've been talking about, covering the importance of, independent independent authors and things like that. So the one thing I wanted everyone to know is tell them a little bit about yourself. Because I know you write, but you do journalism. You're also a journalist. You're an editor. There's a lot to you. So why don't you explain or describe who you are?
Yeah, so I'm a multimedia journalist. Currently, I'm a writer for the Grio. It's an African American owned outlet that really prioritizes Black news, because I feel like for a lot of mainstream media, if it's not white, it's not important. And if it's not somebody like a George Floyd, being killed on camera, then it's not important. And my thing has always been, if we don't have representation in the newsroom, then we are not represented, when the story is told. Our story should be told by us, and I'm very happy that I'm able to do that. I take up after Ida B. Wells. She was an activist and journalist. I try to mold myself after her. And I'm also moonlighting as a novelist. I wrote my novel Control. It's based on a young Gen Z girl who wants to be the next Beyonce and Rihanna. And she comes up against Me Too in the music industry. And I feel like it's very important that young girls and boys know that, you don't have to be the perfect victim in order to be a victim. Unfortunately, sexual abuse seems to be a rite of passage. And it happened to me, and I feel like it's happened to almost everybody that I know, which is unfortunate. But I'm hoping that, a new generation knows that they can speak out and they can get help. And I love to do jigsaw puzzles.
Do you do the like the multi-pieces one, or you do like based on your mood?
Multi-pieces one. I'm doing 1,001 right now. It's about donuts. I haven't done a jigsaw puzzle in about 3 months, so I was like, let me get back into it. Because I feel like, I'm sorry, I was gonna say that, jigsaw puzzles are very confusing, but I feel like it's a very, it can be relaxing, and it teaches you strategy, because you have to really, really think about which next piece you're going to get. And it also like reinforces the fact to me, the puzzle always comes together. You may have one piece and you may be trying to figure it out, but the puzzle always comes together.
Have you ever thought of trying those 3D ones? My cousins and I, sometimes we try them out. We did one of, I think we did one of a pyramid that was supposed to be the replica of the Valley of the Kings. So I always ask that when people do jigsaws, are they looking to expand?
I am. I did try to do a 3D and it just like took me out, and I was too chicken to try again. But that is like the next frontier. I really want to do a 3D jigsaw puzzle, just to test myself.
I am such a Lego fanatic that every time I attempt a jigsaw, my brain just goes, "This is not your world, but I want to try." So when anyone makes that as a hobby, that's like really cool to me. And have you ever thought of like making your own jigsaw? Because they have these things now where you can like make custom pieces.
Yes, I have, but I feel like it's a lot of work, and so I just want to like kind of like get back into like hit my stride a little bit. But it's also about finding the time to do puzzles.
Yeah,
because the past couple of months have just been very, very chaotic.
I can imagine.
My whole thing has just been, let's reset.
So I wanted to discuss you and the concept of media as a whole. I know you have, you're very vocal about certain topics. A common question would probably be is, what's your standards? Like what do you would like to see when it comes to a open and healthy media dialogue?
Oh, less clickbait. I cannot stand clickbait, because I feel like the internet is a good thing and a bad thing. Social media, the digital world, it became so much easier for people to like pass themselves off as journalists. You're not a journalist, you're a commentator. And those are very two different things. I went to school for journalism, I earned my degree. And when you're in journalism school, there are certain tenets that you were taught. And I feel like those tenets have just completely been abandoned and masked. All this disinformation, people wanting to be the first but not correct. It's the fact is like it has to be both. I'm a very fast writer, and so I can get breaking news up very quickly. But I cannot stand clickbait, that you are purposefully, spreading misinformation. And of course, we're all human, we're all fallible. Sometimes I get, fooled by something. But once you know something is false, you have to go on the record and correct it. You have to retract it. But no, people just double down. It's the reason why I cannot stand the majority of the UK press, in particular the British royal reporters, the royal rats, as I refer to them. Because the thing is that, I was out of a job, and so I have nothing but time on my hands. I had nothing but time on my hands for a little while when Meghan and Harry got together, to Duke and Duchess of Sussex. And so I'm watching these rats, denigrate Meghan. And the thing is, what you have to be careful about, and I think the Sussex Squad picked up on it, is the fact that narratives are shaped. As a journalist, I realized that, you had Kate Middleton, who was being perfected as this perfect white woman, whereas Meghan Markle, who has black blood in her, was being denigrated every single day. After a while, that's not a coincidence. It is purposeful. And then you have a lot of people who keep saying, "Oh, I don't like Meghan." You can't think of one reason why you don't like Meghan, except the fact that the media told you that she was bad. She has black blood. She's an evil black bitch, and you don't like her. And I felt like it was my duty. Like, if nobody else is going to do it, I'm going to keep speaking out on it. But what I found along my journey is that we have a lot of good people out there. The Sussex Squad took up arms, stood in the gap. And I feel like if it weren't for us, I feel like it's so trendy right now to push back against the UK media and their lies. But we stood in the gap when nobody else would.
You
And
mentioned
that's what
something
I
that was
that's what I want to do basically in my career, to stand in the gap. There are so many people who need a voice. Well, they have voices. People just aren't listening. I want to be able to give them the platform to use their voice.
you mentioned something that was really interesting. You mentioned a couple of things. One thing was the difference between a journalist and a commentator.
Mm-hmm.
What would be considered the line that you're no longer a journalist, you're now a commentator?
You're just giving your opinion. It's not backed up by fact. You're just giving your opinion, just putting it out there. And if that's what you want to do, that's what you want to do. But don't call yourself a journalist. Because for journalists, we have to get both sides of the story. Like, I might, like, if let's just say that something happened to you, right? I like
Mm-hmm.
you and we're friends, but the thing is that I have to get the other side. Because I can't just put out like a blatant one-sided article and not even make an attempt to reach out to the other person. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. So, do you think that people are hiding behind some of these degrees to have like the image of journalism,
Yes,
or
I don't even think it's something that we're even bothering to get a degree. They're not bothering to get a degree because, some of the stuff that I see, the sloppy work that I see, is sort of like, I don't believe you graduated from journalism. I just don't believe it. I have to actually see. I guess I'm a truther, a journalism truther. I need to see your degree. I need to see that diploma, because some of the practices that you're utilizing, this is not journalism. This is clickbaiting. You're just trying to be the first. It's sort of like when Kobe Bryant and Gianna, God rest their
yeah,
souls, they all died in the plane crash. All of a
right?
sudden, they're killing off Rick Fox. They're killing off Kobe's wife. They're killing off all of Kobe's children. It's sort of like, this is already a tragedy. It's a horrific tragedy. Let's take 2 seconds to verify this information.
I I I agree completely, and I also love the fact that you mentioned verification. But you also something that really I have so much respect for you saying, stand in the gap. We a lot of people rely on media coverage. I have my own views on the 24-hour media thing, but a lot of people rely on that for you know for facts, or it's close to the interpretation of facts as possible. And you don't really see the balance of the two. So when you say stand in the gap, and you're saying that from someone with that language or communications background, what does that mean on a professional level?
On a professional level, it means sort of like, I will use George Floyd. That young lady, the young teenager, she captured his murder on tape. And when you look at the initial police write up, none of what happened on tape made it to their report. It's sort of like people seeing something that is wrong, and calling it out. And if you are a journalist, that duty is even more critical. You have to do what is right. And I believe social media, for all its ills, has created a vacuum where people can kind of push back against this disinformation, this coordinated disinformation that takes place. I'll go back to Harry and Meghan. You know, in the age of Princess Diana in the 80s, there was no social media. And so the British royal family could paint Diana as a lunatic, as a loon, as somebody who was unstable, who was paranoid. But everything that she said was true. In 2021, in the 21st century, now we have social media. So when these royal rats are printing their lies about Harry and Meghan, we can immediately go on Twitter, Facebook, or whatever platform that we choose to utilize and push back against us and push back against those lies. We don't have to kind of just be idle participants. We can just get actively get involved. And it's about pushback. It's about holding people accountable. You have a duty as a journalist to inform the public. You cannot distort information because you have a certain particular point of view. And I want to make something clear. It is not about worshiping at the altar of Harry and Meghan. That's never what it's been about. It's been about being accountable, telling the truth. Because you can't say that, you know, Harry and Meghan are fair game, but you ignore the scandals and allegations surrounding William, Kate, and Prince Andrew. The horrific allegations against Prince Andrew. Nobody makes a 24/7, as you mentioned, a 24/7 news cycle out of the allegations against him. His ties to Jeffrey Epstein, a convicted sex offender. But yeah, we have to hear about Frogmore Cottage, you know, a baby's name. A baby's name took up two
I
weeks worth
know.
of ink. And it just made me shake my head. And the fact that this is what people, you know, latch onto. It's not the fact that, you know, young girls have been possibly, you know, trafficked by a British member of the British royal family. No, we're going to get upset because Lilibet can only be to the queen. It's like, give me a break. And this is the problem with our current media cycle. We take small things and we make them huge, but we don't look at the microaggression. One thing that kind of upset me this morning is the fact that a lot of Republicans are pushing for the so-called Britney Act, which would make it against the law to have family members, you know, be involved in conservatorships because there's an obvious conflict of interest, particularly financially. I think that's a good thing. But why aren't we that animated to work on voting rights? You see what I'm talking about? It
Right.
always has to be that shiny object. And I get sometimes it's low hanging fruit, but other people need your advocacy as well. It's not just about the sexy stories. People need your advocacy. Use your power for a greater good and not just because it gets you a quick headline.
Now, okay, so you mentioned, I love that part, which is why I also have a slight issue with the 24-hour news cycle. Now, hear me out,
Mhm.
okay? And this is just from my perspective and how I view things. The 24-hour news cycle made sense when the news was just getting started. And when I mean the news, I mean like the news network, and they were pushing it out. But now that's not the case. Now you have YouTube. Now you mentioned you have social media now. So listening to, you know, the reruns of Fox or the reruns of CNN really doesn't do anything. And also it kind of feels like it's hindering the verification part of journalists. Like, we're not getting the facts, we're getting your interpretation of what makes you money and helps your bottom line. I just feel like we're getting more of the business and
Mhm.
less of the situation, like what you said before about standing in the gap. I always viewed journalists like Edward Murrow. You know what I mean? Like, you know, what's my man's name? He was on, I think he was on 60 Minutes, but, you
I don't
know,
Ed Bradley.
Ed Bradley, thank you. When I was a kid, I grew up like listening to the old radio shows and everything, and they used to be about, let's tell you what is going on, and how you interpret that is up to you. But these are the facts. I'm not feeling that anymore. I feel like every network or every platform has their own agenda, and they're marketing that agenda. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, and it
And
can get
maybe it's
very
just me.
discouraging. No, no, it's not just you, and it can get very, very discouraging because there are a lot of good reporters, a lot of good journalists out there doing good work. But unfortunately, we seem to be a very vocal minority. Um, a lot of journalists act in bad faith. Unfortunately, they're acting in bad faith. They know that the information they're putting out there is wrong, but it gets them clicks. It makes them go viral. And my thing is, my credibility is more important than going viral. And I know
How
that
do
a lot of
you
people don't like that. It's a very Pollyanna view. It's a very cliched view, but I feel it's more important to have your credibility because you can go viral for one day, but your credibility can be shot even more quickly.
well, I know you know this, that by profession and by trade, I'm a real estate agent. And, we all have our own, like, public issues. I'm going to be
Yeah.
honest. Real estate sometimes needs Jesus. But I always wonder what goes on behind the scenes to hold our colleagues or, our industry accountable, because we don't see those things in public. So we always assume that every journalist is the same. We have this kind of like jaded impression of people.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you, even if you're not doing it in public, how do you keep people holding, how do you keep your colleagues, or how do you try to find ways to keep your colleagues or your industry to some form of accountability and standards? Because I read your stuff all the time. I'm not gonna lie, I do.
Thank
I'm
you.
one. I'm woman enough to admit that. But I also, I listen to, and this once again, this is an upbringing thing. You tend to listen to like the opposition. So
Yes, yes.
so, but sometimes when I listen to the other side, I still feel like there's more of a forced belief and not an actual fact behind it. So, is there like a system that goes on behind the scenes to hold, other people, like other journalists or other people in the communication industry or media industry,
Yes,
accountable?
yes. I belong to the National Association of Black Journalists, and they are an advocacy group that advocates on behalf of Black journalists. And so when they see something not right or they think something is wrong, they put out a statement. They try to have meetings with these people. So there are guardrails in journalism in place to call certain issues out. And also, I think it also helps having people who can pick up the phone and just say, you know what, Steph, I read your article. I just I just wasn't feeling it. I think you could have, done things a certain way. I believe every organization has that, has an internal mechanism in place to say that, you know what, this isn't it. This isn't the move. You should have done this a completely different way. You should have reached out to X, Y, and Z. And also, we have the public. The public holds journalists accountable. Because let me tell you, people aren't afraid to get in my mentions or send me an email like, hey, you know what? This article was wrong. How dare you? Put it down. Start all over again. Okay, the public is not shy. If nobody else will, the public is not shy about holding journalists accountable. And the thing is that you can't get so big that you don't think you can be held accountable. There has to be a certain level of humility involved. And I don't think a lot of people, I think a lot of people reach a certain level and go, you know what, you can't tell me what to do. I've been doing this for 10 years. You can't tell me what to do. But the thing is that we're all human and mistakes get made. It's about learning from them.
I agree, and I love the fact that you mentioned about, like, it's a process and it's about learning. But you also said something. I know I'm jumping around a lot, but you've mentioned so many great things that I just want to squeeze it all in one moment. And there's one thing I loved was the fact that you talked about the differences of media in the UK and here. So here's the interesting thing. I know you were on BBC. I know you did an appearance on CTV and things like that. Do you see that there is a visible difference between how we manage our media here in the US versus the Commonwealth or the UK?
Yes, I believe in the United States there's more of a dearth for pushback because what if you've ever noticed the UK reporters, I'm not going to mention the rat's name, but they come in the UK, they are so openly hostile and bigoted. But when they come to the United States, they quickly change their tune. They're more professional, they're more conciliatory, and they're more like, oh, you know what? Perhaps they have a point. Because the American public will push back. America has many flaws, but one thing that Americans do is that we fight. We fight and we fight hard. And you can't be coming on these US airwaves talking all this trash and junk and not expect a pushback. African Americans in this country are very much animated and we're very much engaged. I'm not saying that's not true in the UK, because I know that they have their own issues going on and they are also advocating for themselves. But in the United States, we take action immediately. We're not waiting for a particular moment. We're calling it out right on the spot. And I feel as though the harassment that Harry and Meghan got in the UK, it just went on too long for my liking. And I know that we had reached out to the UK Black Journalist Group and we said, aren't you going to say anything? Aren't you going to push back? And their response was no. They didn't make a statement until it became on trend. And that's what I don't like. You shouldn't have to wait for something to become trendy to speak out.
You know what? That's an interesting point to make, because that's how I felt every time. Because there's the UK version of some of the US channels like BET, MTV, or things like that, and I didn't hear anything. And all of a sudden, it's like, I think like a year ago, there was just something like this, like little like tweet about racism is wrong. Okay, that's good to know. Thank you
Yeah,
for
because
that.
everybody discovered last year that racism is real. I mean, thank you for joining the rest of us,
Yeah, it's like, okay, thanks for letting us know that. Anything else? Sexism sucks. Like, what do you like? Okay, Captain Obvious. But you're right that there is this difference. But I just realized, like, I'm trying to, basically what I'm trying to understand is, when it comes to the standards, even not just like mainstream media, but I'm talking also like grassroots. Like there's a thing called the Black Media Channel on YouTube, and then there's more vloggers. How does that get incorporated into stuff like the Griot or the 19th or things like that? Like, how do you balance that out? Because nothing against Tim Cass, nothing against all those people, they're great, but they're largely opinion based. So how do they go from opinion based to incorporated into CNN?
I think it's just about having more. You can be an opinion based, but just bringing in more journalists, people who are more versed in what you're trying to do. Just say that what, this is my opinion, but we have an actual journalist here who is going to present the entire story in its totality. And I feel as though sometimes people just don't want that. They just want to give their opinion. Okay, if you're just trying to give your opinion, then just say that. But you don't have to present yourself as a journalist, because you're not a journalist. You're just somebody giving your opinion. It's sort of like Fox News. Fox News actually does have a lot of good journalists, but they are all seem to be drowned out by the opinionators. And so people kind of see them as one and the same, and they're not.
Okay. I actually do have a business question. Obviously, that's my job. But what standards should we have as entrepreneurs or things like that when it comes to looking through the media and the filtering the whole, we mentioned in the beginning, clickbait? Like, what should we be looking for when it comes to our understanding our neighborhoods or our country?
I would always, for me, a good indicator is the headline and the actual article. Because I feel like a lot of times the headline says one thing and the article is just something drastically different. Because they're trying, like again, you're trying to do the SEO, you're trying to get people's attention, you're trying to make that headline so attractive people just want to click on the link. But it has to be, the substance has to support the headline. And I feel like a lot of times, unfortunately, it doesn't. It's sort of like, don't judge a book by its cover. Because you can see a book and it has the worst cover ever and you're not going to pick it up, but it could be the best book you ever read. Or you could see a book and it has an absolute gorgeous cover, but it's the worst book you ever read. You know what I'm saying? It's just sort of like the two things have to be in balance. It has to be, the article has to match and the facts have to be there. Like if something is developing, okay, it's developing, just say that we're working on getting more information. Don't make shit up. Please don't make shit up, because you'll get sued. You'll get sued. All right. And the thing is that people think that it's a small thing, but the thing is, like, even just getting somebody's name wrong, it's just like really, really embarrassing, because the thing is, like, if you can't get somebody's name right, And I know that may seem like a small thing, but if you can't catch that, why should I trust whatever else that you're trying to say in the story?
Speaking of stories and books, tell us about your book.
Oh, Control My Baby. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. I've been working on Control for a good 15 years now. Everybody keeps saying stop, but I don't feel like God gave me the words in vain, and so I keep on going. It's about a 17-year-old girl named Teresa Marie Jenkins, Risa, and she is a Gen Z superstar. She believes in Black Lives Matter. She believes that she's fighting against Me Too, and she wants to be the next big thing in music. There's Chloe. She wants to be next after Beyonce and Rihanna. Like that's her place. And so she enters the music industry, and unfortunately, she gets groomed, by an older man. And it's about her journey. How does she deal with that? And of course, being me, being extra, I have Risa deal with it in the most out of control ways, in the most flamboyant ways, in the most dramatic ways. But it's just about people often say, well, why didn't you say anything? Why didn't you do anything when an assault happens? And Risa, if you read the book, Risa takes action. She does the most, but she takes action. It may not be the right action, but she takes action. And right now I'm currently working on the sequel. I'm looking for a
Yes.
literary agent. Yeah, I'm looking for a literary agent. I'm not gonna stop until I get one because I do feel that I'm working on my empire. I will be a New York Times best-selling author. I am going to be that. It's just taking a little bit more time, but I'm still on the road. I'm still working on it.
So before I say anything, spoilers.
Mhm.
But there's a huge generational component to this, to that book, that I think should be discussed, because you even said yourself, like, she's a little extra, but the extra feels like it's needed. Does
Yeah.
that make any sense?
Yes, it is.
And then you have like her mom on the same wave, different wavelength, but on the same wavelength. You know what I mean? Like, a little extra is not bad. However, in my time, we did this, but
Yes.
so I want to ask you this: why was the generational aspect so important to this story?
It was important because I didn't want people to think that Risa just came out of thin air. We are all mostly a product of our environments. And so I want to show that, Risa has a loving and supportive family, but even she can fall through the cracks because I feel like a lot of times people throw away girls in society. They call them fast, they call them sluts, they call them tramps, they call these girls all types of names except recognizing them as victims of older men and being groomed and preyed upon. And I want to show that even though Risa has all these things going for her, she's still insecure. She still doesn't feel loved, and she's finding love in all the wrong places. And I want to show that, there are people who care about her and that she's going to be okay. Whatever she's going through at the moment, she's going to be okay because it takes a village. None of us are an island. Most of us, fortunately have family members who care about us, people, friends who care. And I never wanted to just be a story about a rogue girl who just gets into all this drama and nobody cares about her. I want somebody who's going through it to understand that there is somebody who cares about you. There are resources available to you. And there are people, and the thing is that nothing that I've written about is new. There's nothing new under the sun. I always say that about when people ask me to describe Control. There's nothing new under the sun. Unfortunately, we've all read a story about a girl that's been, endured sexual abuse. How does she overcome it? How do the people who came before her overcome it? Because the thing is that I know that Bill Cosby was recently released from prison, and that was a big issue. And the thing is that you saw a lot of older black women taking up for Bill Cosby, and you saw a lot of younger women saying, "Wait a minute, hold up, what's going on here?" We see the generational divide, and that's very much important in this discussion. That because if Lisa's going to find her way forward, she's going to need the guidance. We all need guidance. No, but none of us started. Not everybody's a prodigy. We're all starting off somewhere.
That's true, but I think one thing that, especially in the case of Me Too and everything, It also highlighted a larger issue of what we deemed as boys will be boys. You know, I hate that phrase. That phrase bugs me. But, and what we, not what we allowed, but what we did not address as society, because there shouldn't have been a Bill Cosby, or, you know what I mean? Not Bill Cosby in that sense of him being successful, but going that far without true accountability. There
I
shouldn't
also
have
think the
been a
fact
Harvey
that
Weinstein.
I also think the fact that it's easy for people to overlook certain issues because in my book, in Control, I purposely didn't want to make Risa simply black or white. Risa exists in the gray area. And so when you have something like a Bill Cosby or Harvey Weinstein, I'm so glad you brought them up, is the fact that people just dismiss these women, these allegations, because they think, oh, they're just trying to get on. People assume that, if I'm trying to have a successful career and I get entangled with these men, I had it coming. And it's that, it's a way of, saying, you know what, that's just the times that we were in. Because one thing that really annoys me is the fact that, the R. Kelly and Aaliyah situation. The fact that, I think she came out in 94, 93. The fact that you have a grown ass man and a 14-year-old girl and nobody is saying anything, that bullshit, I'm sorry, but that could never happen in 2021. Nobody could say a grown man is BFF with a little girl and nobody is saying anything. Are you kidding me? Are you absolutely kidding me? Like, you can't, if you look at it now, if you look at the footage now, you clearly see what's happening, but it was accepted. And everybody keeps just saying, well, that was the time that we were in. Thankfully, times have changed, but it should have never been that way. And everybody wants to keep everything in the house. Don't tell people your business. And the thing is that if a girl is being sexually abused of a boy, that is my business. Because that predator can possibly prey on somebody that I love, and I'm not having that.
You know what? That's a good point. And also, you mentioned about the family aspect. I know you and I both heard like certain things should just stay within the family, and we should address these things within the family. But if there's no standards within the family, or nothing's being addressed,
Yeah.
it's going to keep going. And then that person thinks it's okay. And I'm going to be, not me, but like that child or that young lady is going to grow up thinking this is acceptable. And you just pray that she gets help, or you pray that someone in her bubble understands that something's wrong. But by
Yeah.
then, it's a whole nother issue.
Yeah, because that's kind of like what happens with Risa. She didn't go to her parents right away because she was afraid of being judged. She was afraid of being blamed. But the thing is that it's hard, but you have to get the words out there. And I think one of the worst things to get the words out there and not be believed.
Right, but also the great thing about her though is she wasn't just being believed. I think also the problem is that you mentioned her environment. The way the book is set up, she's not set up as those, like, it doesn't follow any stereotypes. And it's not a strong stereotypical book. When we read about books like these or something similar to that, it's someone, and I'm no diss to South Bronx, but born in the South Bronx, and mama's this and dad works at the bodega and he has a half brother twice removed down the block. This is someone who comes from a successful household. The dad's not around as much, but it's a white guy and he does his thing, but they also have their issues. And then you have the mom having her way of trying to justify or figure everything out at the same time. But it's a normal environment. You know what I mean? It's a no family. Mom works hard. She has really decent like uncles. There's this whole like, there's no real. Everyone's like, when anyone hears the word control and things like that, and I think sometimes when they read it, because I do tell my friends about the book,
Thank
I
you.
think they assume in their heads it's gonna be like, oh my God, it's gonna be like Zayn. No, it's not gonna be like Zayn. It's a little bit more in depth than that. So what ends up happening is we have this huge debate, which is what I love about it, is that it actually sparks conversations. And it sparks the conversation of if she had this issue, I'm trying to control what to say because I also want to be careful with spoilers. If she was struggling with this issue and she had a problem telling people, is it just because she had a problem telling people, or did she notice a pattern of behavior that made her realize that even saying anything would do nothing.
Yeah, that's a
So,
good point.
so
People
I would
often
be
say that
sitting
if I
there.
just say anything, what's going to change, you know?
Exactly. So, and she's watching in her own environment this, and kids are smart. So they'll see things and they'll go, if, the teacher in third grade or the high school teacher, whatever, didn't address this bullying accusation, me getting thrown into the girls' bathroom, he's not going to care.
No.
So the great thing about the book is that the book it covers a lot of things that normally would either be hinted at, but are actually discussed. Like sexual harassment, like being biracial, or from two different, not even just being biracial, but being two completely different worlds.
Yeah, one thing that I really want to do is like take a spin on the whole, because I've always thought that, a lot of women, have these kids because they're trying to get rich. And I always thought, well, what happens to these babies? Because I feel like because the thing is that, I don't mind sharing the spoiler. Missy had Risa for a payday. I mean, that's just kind of Missy is reformed now, but Missy was trying to get a payday. And I always wonder what happens to the kid. And the thing is that one of the things is that, Risa's father loves her, but he also feels like, oh, damn, this woman trapped me. And so I always that tension is there, and I didn't want to make Ben to be like this. I felt it would have been too easy to make him to be a racist, that he just doesn't like this black kid. I felt it would have been more interesting to show that there's a genuine tension between them. There is a love between them, but he doesn't know how to really be the best possible father because he just doesn't get her completely all the way. He just sees her as something just really just like this girl is just
There.
really weird. Yeah, she's just there. Like I gave you some money. Like what more do you want? And he can't see that she just wants his unconditional love that he gives to his other two children.
But I also think he's afraid of that as well, because then on top of that, in his defense, because remember, I read this book, like I said, I read it and it's like, is this the little thing I'm missing? And then I'll read it again and realize part of it's also just the fact of his fear. Because if he does give that part of himself over, that justifies her existence. I know that sounds really corny to say that, or some way disrespectful, but if you read that like little nuance of even him staying when it was like getting a little uncomfortable for him,
Uh-huh.
I think he wants to emotionally give himself to her as a father,
Mm-hmm.
but I think part of that is that he's struggling with it because of the, as our people say, the Provence of her creation. You know what I mean? So I
Uh-huh.
think he's struggling as well because he wants to love her. I mean, who wouldn't? That kid got fire. But you also have to remember the circumstances behind her birth weren't that great, but it's not her fault that she was born.
Yes.
But it is. So for me, in my head, I'm going, it's not her fault that she was born, and this kid's amazing. I'm like, I would want this as my child. But I'm also familiar with the fact that this man is really struggling with the fact that this amazing child came out of this rather complicated circumstances. So
Yes.
how do I give myself to my child as a father without making her think that this was okay? So which is why I'm saying she has these pattern of behaviors and she's watching these adults around her. So I can imagine being a young woman trying to figure out how to communicate my trauma surrounded by people who filter theirs.
Yes, exactly. And I always wanted to be sure that that Missy has learned, and I always wanted to make one. I always wanted Missy to be supportive of Risa because we could have had a scene where Missy just kind of loses her mind and just goes off. Because a lot of women, unfortunately, a lot of mothers do blame their daughters for what happens to them. And I did not want that to be the case between Missy and Risa. I wanted her to be completely supportive. And I also want to, like, at the end, people see that, Missy is a mother lion. She's reformed, but not that completely changed. Like she she got her ways too. Like she ain't changed with that much. When it comes to her child, it's eye for an eye.
And I like I said, that was like the perfect part, that none of it is linear. Once again, you read books like are similar to that, And I say similar because you're never going to get anything exactly like that. I mean, it has its own flavor.
Mm-hmm.
But I love the fact that none of the characters are linear. It's like it's not one dimension. There's
Yeah, I really
so
wanted
many.
them to be black and white. I'm not sure if you picked up on this, but Risa, Candy, Stephanie, and Shantae are basically me, like four exaggerated versions of me. Because when you first read the book, you see Stephanie the novelist. Clearly, that's the most obvious hint. Yeah, I put myself in the novel. You have Stephanie the novelist. You have Risa the dreamer, the fiery Aries, who's gonna be out there. You have Candy, the sweet one, the nice one, and you have Shantae, who's a little bit messy, who loves her tea. And I had a lot of fun writing Shantae, and I was like, I'm not going to write her out because she does backstab Risa, but I really do enjoy Shantae because she just says the most craziest things, and I use her to make myself laugh. And so I really wanted the characters to be multi-dimensional because if I'm strictly writing you as black or white, I'm most likely killing you off. I'm most likely killing you off because there's just no use for you. I'm gonna kill you off. Because
Now,
the most interesting villains to me, like Thanos and
yeah,
Killmonger, you can see where they're coming from. You can see.
exactly.
You don't agree with what they're doing, but you can see where they're coming from. I feel like if somebody's writing you as a cartoon villain, I'm not that hooked. I'm not that hooked.
Oh, I miss Stanley. You know, but here's the twisted thing about this whole thing, and one of the reasons why it's so important that we talk, and I feel like we're gonna have to talk again soon. How I found out about the book was through Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't something that was naturally popped up. It was just, it was a tweet, and I was going, I like books. I'm in the middle. I'm like, I got nothing to do. Let's read. And that's basically how it happened. And then all of a sudden it became like I can't go to bed without reading a chapter.
Well, that makes me really, really happy. Like when I hear stuff like that, I'm not even lying. It really does encourage me to keep going because I was supposed to like start a mini book campaign, and then COVID hit, and then it was just sort of like I'm back to square one. And now I'm trying to find like a literary because I really do feel like this book can make a difference. And everybody
So,
who's read it likes it. It's just a matter like, can I get it to the wider public?
and now that's where my question is: why is it? And I know this is an interesting question considering the fact that not too long the Duchess did the bench, and then you have the cookbook, and then you have like these other things she did. But someone mentioned on Twitter about celebrities and book publishing. Now, there's plenty of celebrities who kind of like failed in that game in dramatic fashion, but
Mm-hmm.
there's also a nice slew of independent authors out there, such as yourself. Why is that in that section of publishing not highlighted enough? Like those independent authors, or more, you know,
It's all
want
about
the
money. It's a money's game. Because the thing is, yes, you can do it by yourself, but you have to do advertising, you have to do promotion, you have to do all this other stuff. You have to get name ID, and it's hard. It's really, really difficult. And I think what I didn't like was when Megan published The Bench is the fact there was all this backlash. She's taking a spot from somebody who's more deserving from Black authors. You guys don't give a damn about Black authors any other day. You don't give a damn. And the thing is, there are a lot of Black authors who need their chance, but it's not Megan's fault that we're not getting that chance. These publishers see money with her. It's easy money. And you'd be stupid not to sign Meghan Markle to a publishing deal. That's easy money. She's not the reason why, we can't get opportunities. We just have to make it more equitable for other people. And I'm really, really hoping that, more of us get more opportunities, but I would never be upset at Megan is not the root of the issue. Hate the game, not the player, man.
The
It
funny
ain't her.
is there was a tweet about this. Was I'm you can tell this lady was not important in my head, but she said how celebrities are overtaking the publishing game, and my brain automatically went to that ghostwriting book that Kylie and what's that girl? Kylie and her sister did,
Kendall?
and Kendall. And they signed like a multi-million-dollar deal. It was about some superhero teenager or whatever, or some Inspector Gadget looking person. And it was terrible. The writing was not good. It didn't even make it to a New York Times. So I don't even think it made it to Barnes and Nobles. Like, it was just really, really bad. So when someone says to me, but meanwhile you have the one with I think it turned out to be a short cartoon about the hair, and that her mom used to always do her hair. The one written by the NFL player, that one was really good, and it inspired a lot of people to basically look at how their kids a little differently, be more, celebrate the beauty of natural hair as a child with children. So in my head, I'm going, if the celebrity game was that on point, a book about a teenager, inspector person from the Jenners would do far better, but it flopped.
Yes.
So it tells me that it has nothing to do essentially about the game of the celebrity. It has to do with how interesting the publishing game is. And you're right, a lot of it's due to marketing, because I guarantee you, I've read that book I've read Control so many times at this point that I feel like I'm dreaming about the book. Like, you get so good, or you're so
I thank
ingrained
you
into
so much for saying
something.
that. That's really, really. Thank you so much for saying that. I really, I don't, like I keep saying, I don't take that for granted, because I really just want to be able to just, make a connection with people. So I really appreciate you saying
Oddly
that.
enough, you actually hit number 2 on my favorite book list, because number 1 will
Oh,
always be Mansfield Park. I'm a huge Fanny Price fanatic. I can't change that. It's not going anywhere. Number 2 is Control, and number 3 is it's called a report on. It's about the author's Alexis de Tocqueville, and he is from France, and he does an analyzation of democracy in the United States, and it's a very nerdy book, but it does wonders for my mental health. So it's thick, like ridiculously thick, because I think 1,000 pages. But something about Control, you just have to revisit it to understand it, because there's so many parts to it, and you want to describe it, and then you go, I feel like I'm describing one part of it and not describing the whole thing. But then you can't describe the whole thing, because then it just looks like you're telling the whole story.
yeah.
Which is why it's so good. So I'm trying to figure out why, and I know there's more books like that. I just wish there were. I just wish independent authors had their own platform, to like an NPR type thing, to promote their work, because I've really been getting more into independent authors during the pandemic. Lots of short stories, stepping out of the comfort zone a little. A lot of people have lots of fantasies that are very uncomfortable for me right now. But I'm wondering, what can we do as consumers to help you?
Just stuff like what you're doing now, just to continue, word of mouth, because I feel like while I'm still working to get, a mainstream publishing deal and a literary agent, word of mouth helps. Because I know that for me, in addition to you loving the book, I had dropped my book off at the hair salon, and Black women have their opinion, and they were like, "I love the book," and I was like, "Yes, yes," because I feel like they're not going to, like, if they don't like something, they're gonna let you know, but they were like, "Oh, we actually love the book." And so, just stuff like that, word of mouth, it's sort of like, stand in the gap for me right now. Until, one of these book publishing companies, like, what, Stephanie, you're next. I just actually just continue to stand in the gap for me. Word of mouth, look, tell people about Control, tell people about my work.
Okay. Is there well, obviously I'm going to do that because I haven't shut up about it. So, um as someone who's also in media, and obviously a fellow sister, what advice do you have for people like me, who, besides building a business, but are trying to navigate through the social media game, or the media game in general? Because we promote our stuff and things like that, and there's certain publications I just don't they don't get my ad money or my revenue or whatever. But what advice would you have for people like me who are on social media, who uses that to not just, connect with different people, but also building their brand, as I put that in quotations?
I would say be authentic, be yourself. I think and that's one thing that, Cardi B's rise has taught me to be yourself. Because I feel like a lot of people, they fake it until they make it and they just try to be somebody that they're not. Eventually that catches up to you. Like be your most I read something a couple weeks ago. Be the favorite version of yourself, not the best version of yourself, but your favorite version of yourself. And that kind of like struck me, like that's kind of like deep when you think about it. People always say be the best version of yourself, and the person was like, no, be your favorite version of yourself. But ultimately, just be yourself, because if I feel like if you're fake, eventually it's just gonna come crashing down around you. And to align yourself with people who are doing kind of like similar work, because you don't want to get caught up in some nonsense that's just not for you, you know?
Yeah. So I always ask this question at the end of every interview, and I feel like this is a very important question now. What was your experiences during the pandemic, and what have you learned from them?
I don't know, for the pandemic, I was just trying to be still because unfortunately, my mom had gotten sick. Unfortunately, she's okay now, but it just sort of like showed you the fragility of life. I know that, we have mass shootings and things like that, and I felt that people became desensitized. Okay, it's another mass shooting, and I felt like this was a global pandemic, and it literally set everybody still, no matter who you are, no matter how much money or how much status you have. A global pandemic set everybody down. And so I just learned to kind of like, work on myself. I've been working on my teeth. I've been going to the gym. I've been working out, working on my speech, just trying to improve myself in ways that I possibly didn't have a chance before. Just things like that. So like when we get out there, I'm ready for when the world opens back up again. And I know that, things are starting to open up again right now, but just just trying to work on myself, trying to improve myself in small and big ways. Because I feel like it's never too late.
What do you feel like you'll take with you going forward?
Learning to trust myself and that I am doing better. Learning to trust myself, learning to trust myself. Because I think that I'm just gonna be brutally honest. I think a lot of people know I didn't have a job for 7 full years. I didn't have a full time job for 7 full years. 7 full years I didn't have a job, and um, that's the same for Job. If you were a religious person in the Bible, that's the same as Job. Job didn't have a job. I'm sorry. Job lost everything for 7 years. Job
Years.
lost everything for 7 years. And so I didn't have a job, and I just kept praying. I just kept putting one foot in front of the other. I kept doing all these job interviews, and I kept getting rejected over and over. But I never gave up. And in the year of a pandemic, 2020, that's when God said, "No, it's your turn." During the worst crisis, the worst global crisis of our lifetime, God said, "This is your opportunity. This is your time now. You have a job. You have your own apartment. Your teeth are straight." I know that sounds weird, but like Carly said, I got a bag and fix my teeth. I got a bag and fix my teeth. Just stuff like that. And it just showed that I'm not somebody who's going to give up. Like God showed me that I'm a fighter, that I stood and I stood tall, and for the most part, I kept my character. Because you know what? It would have been very, very easy. It would have been so easy to just say, I'm going to compromise myself if it means I get ahead. And I didn't. And I'm glad that I didn't. So I'm glad about that. And as I continue my rise, I always say, God, keep me in character. Because I feel like it's not that people reveal themselves when they get a little bit of power. And that's just not me. And so I don't want to become like, this egomaniac, somebody who's out to hurt people. I do want to have a backbone. I do want to stand up for myself, but I don't want to be somebody that uses my power to hurt people. Now, if you piss me off, I'm coming after you, but I'm working on that in therapy. I have my novels. I have Risa, doing crazy stuff, so I don't have to do crazy stuff. So thank your lucky stars that I do have my novels to like work out those issues. But for the most part, I think I'm a decent person. Just don't piss me off.
That's true. No, that's actually a good point, good place to say that too, because you know sometimes people assume that if you're like really really nice, don't take. People often say don't take my kindness for weakness.
And I think that's what happened to me. People who saw that I was being nice and they just kind of like stepped all over me. And my therapist said, "Well, you going from, people taking people's shit to not taking any more shit anymore." And I'm like, you have a good point. And I think it's just trying to find the balance. Like, how do you stand up for yourself without? Because I have a fundamental belief: the most evil people, I don't think they were evil. I think at some point somebody did something to them. And then they were like, you know what, before somebody does something to me, I'm going to get them. It's a vicious cycle. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to get caught up in that cycle. There are a couple of people right now who are begging me to act out of character. And you just better hope that I calm down. But the thing is that I'm trying to be like, maintain myself. Like, like when you mess with my family, that just really just makes me upset. But for the most part, I don't want to be thunderous. I really do just want to be like, a positive force. But
I want to snap you in half.
yeah, but fuck around and find out that like, but there's only but so much patience I have. Like God's still working on me. God's still working on me.
Well, everyone's a work in progress.
Yes.
It wouldn't be fun if it wasn't learning.
Yes.
So, but okay, so my last question, which is actually a very important question, is what quote or aspiration do you play around in your head sometimes? Like what's your motto?
If God be before me, who can be against me?
And that is a good way to end this conversation. All right. Thank you everyone for coming. Thank you, yeah, I'm having a blooper. Thank you, Stephanie. And everyone have a great day. Bye.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.